I call this meeting of the Davenport Community School District Board of Directors to order. Director Sherwood, would you please read our vision statement?
Our vision is to provide an education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and community to answer the question, what if?
Thank you. There is no showcase tonight because of spring break. Communications, March 25th, 7 p.m., a regular board meeting, ASC, Jim Hester Boardroom. March 26th, 6:30 p.m., Board Diversity Training, ASC, Jim Hester Boardroom. April 1st, 5:30 p.m., Committee of the Whole Meeting, ASC, Jim Hester Boardroom. April 3rd, 4 p.m., Policy Meeting, ASC, Executive Boardroom. April 4th, 4 p.m., Legislative Advocacy Meeting, ASC, Executive Boardroom. April 8th, 7 p.m., Regular Board Meeting, ASC, Jim Hester Boardroom. April 22nd, 7 p.m., Regular Board Meeting, ASC, Jim Hester Boardroom. Next is Open Forum. Open Forum is a time for members of the community to give input at a board meeting regarding school district issues or concerns. Individuals who want to speak should fill out an open forum request and give it to the board secretary prior to open forum. The board will not act on any issue presented during open forum if it was not published as an agenda item. The Iowa Open Meetings Law prohibits action on any issue that is not on the agenda. The President will set the amount of time allowed for individuals to speak during open forum. The board asks that no charges or complaints be made against individual employees of the district or community during open forum. Remarks that reflect negatively on the character or motives of any person will be called out of order. The board is appreciative of the community's interest in our deliberation regarding school boundaries and open enrollment. We value input that will allow us to make a thoughtful decision in the educational best interest of our students. However, remarks that reflect negatively upon specific schools or disparage the students and staff assigned to those schools will be called out of order, and the speaker will be asked to conclude their remarks immediately. We have about 15 open forum requests tonight. Everyone will have 2 minutes. It will be a timed opportunity for you to speak, and I'll read through about half of them first so you know the order, and then I'll call each of you up individually, and you'll come up to the lectern and give your name and address. We'll start with Rachel Douglas, Alexandra Donor, Gordon Atkinson, Bruce Atkinson, Jamie Pratt, Lori Stevens, Judy Howell. We'll start with that group. And so, Rachel Douglas, would you please come up?
Should I come over here? Sorry.
Yes, speak to the microphone, please.
Okay. As you said, I'm Rachel Douglas, and I am here. My son is an 8th grader at Smart Intermediate.
I need your address too.
Sorry, it's
That's
2108 okay. West 2nd, Davenport.
Okay, thank you.
I came tonight to speak. As I said, my son is an 8th grader. He'll be moving on to West High School next year. He's been involved with TAG since 2nd grade. It's been an amazing influence in his life. Done a lot of positive things for him. One big factor for him has been he's in the accelerated math and science program currently, which is also managed by the TAG instructor at SMART. He has benefited in that way. He's had so many positive things. He's done mock trial with the program. He started that in 6th grade, and I really feel that that's been a positive influence in a lot of ways, helping with his public speaking. He's probably more comfortable with that than I am even. He's really grown, and he's had some amazing opportunities, and because of the TAG teacher's commitment, that after school hours and weekends and things like that, and her availability to him, it's been there so much that he's been able to do these things. And she's been an amazing, stable resource in his life, going through those things and offering him challenges through middle school that I think that he may have lost interest in some things if they weren't presented, and in showing him the encouragement that we as parents can give too, but sometimes parents obviously aren't the only influences in children's lives, and I think that the TAG program, it would be a tragic thing if it was cut. I'd like to even see it grow. I know that resources are limited everywhere, and everyone has to look at where best to use resources that are available, but TAG is just so helpful and has made such a difference. He's participated in the National History Day and all sorts of programs that have been a positive influence.
Okay, thank you very much. Next is Alexandra.
My name's Alexandra Donor, 10989 Redwood Avenue, Davenport. Good evening. First, I'd like to thank the administration for agreeing to support TAG at the high school level, but I would also like to encourage the administration to rethink cutting middle school TAG. Personally, I did not attend a public intermediate school, but I have observed the positive effects of TAG in the middle schools. As a 3-year mock trial member at Central, I have seen how well prepared TAG students have been to take on various activities. Middle school TAG enriches students in so many ways. Just this year, I had the opportunity to assist Frank L. Smart TAG students in their preparations for the middle school mock trial competition. I saw that the students in TAG at Smart were incredibly motivated and ready to learn. The enrichment and learning opportunities TAG offers these students is irreplaceable and should not be cut. The challenges TAG offers middle school students are incredibly beneficial. I realize that budget cuts are incredibly important, but so are the futures of the TAG students who rely on the TAG program. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandra. Next is Gordon Atkinson.
Gordon Atkinson, 1521 College Avenue. First of all, thank you for letting me speak and for fully restoring the TAG faculty to the district high schools. While TAG may be important to high school, it's just as important as TAG in elementary and middle schools. By providing TAG in these schools, the school system can ensure higher test scores for those who are involved in these programs as compared to others. The Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965, Section 1705, provides for grants for any, quote, local education agency with expertise in advanced placement services. Priority lies with a school which, quote, demonstrates an intent to carry out activities to increase the availability and participation in advanced placement courses. If funding is a problem, then such grants could be used to not only fund these TAG programs, but possibly fund the school, belay other costs. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much, Gordon. Next is Bruce Atkinson.
Hello, I'm Bruce Atkinson, 1521 College Avenue. Thank you for maintaining Central's TAG program. I have 2 children in the TAG program, Gordon, who you just saw, a senior, and Graham, a freshman. They have both benefited from the TAG program throughout their time at Washington, Sudlow, and Central. TAG at the elementary level is important because not only because it nurtures budding academic talents, but discovers the gifts that the students may have. We're in the second group, my wife and I. As we sent our older son to school, my wife and I thought, of course Gordon can read. His classmates can probably read too as well. Children today have Sesame Street and Reading Rainbow. However, his teachers told us that Gordon's literacy and numeracy were rare. They and we were ready for our younger son when he entered school. I'm hoping that the I'm hoping that the intermediate schools can continue to have a full-time tag facilitator. Gordon utilized the tag activities and programs at Sudlow made possible by a full-time tag facilitator. By the time Graham arrived, he used his brother's tag experience as a baseline and reached for more. At Sudlow, Graham was named a Bell and Blank Scholar and finished second in the Math B, the state Math B. Again, thank you. Keep the borders open, and I hope we can return to an 18 facilitator program. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Next is Jamie Pratt.
My name is Jamie Pratt, 808 South 9th Avenue, Eldridge, but I'm a teacher for Davenport at Wood Intermediate School. You received a packet in a folder, and that's from Lori from SMART and I. So I'd like you to reference that packet for later because I'm not going to be able to cover everything I want to. I'm here because I feel passionately about our intermediate tag programming. I give much of my personal time to my programming on nights, weekends, and going without a prep or lunch, most recently for 3 weeks, because it was what was best for my students and my programming. They're more like my own children and not my students, of which I have a 1, 3, and 5-year-old. That's how I love my students, like my own children. I am in the business of seeing others loved, served, and encouraged. Students as well as staff. I'm growing staff too. I disagree with the proposed cuts to the intermediate tag program because my program is flourishing and growing, just like a healthy child. I teach those children at Wood because I see the value in each and every one of them. And I cultivate that value and bring it to the degree, which brings glory and strength to not only my school but our entire district, aligning with our shared goal of becoming a district of distinction. In your message at the beginning that you read, you said we seek to answer the question of what if. I have so many tag students that answer that question. And when you're in your golden years, they will be supporting you as your future lawyers and doctors, taking good care of you in reciprocity to the quality of the programming you provide. I want to be on that positive bus with you guys, providing excellent programming and providing excellent citizens to Davenport. That tag programming, like I said, is much like a healthy child, and we're doing all kinds of things to nourish that child and help them grow. But if you cut that child in half, one half of the body has the heart and the other has the liver. Both are equally important, and half the body might limp along for a while and do well, but eventually it will perish. I implore you to consider the quality of programming we deliver at Wood Intermediate. And, you know, we've gone to state 2 years in a row for National History Day, 2 years in a row for mock trial. I have numerable relationships with the city of Davenport in a bunch of different programs. And I have over 150 students in my programming. And last week alone, I met with over 80% of them. And I co-plan and co-teach with everybody in the whole school. And I believe in our district.
Thank you, Jamie. Next is Lori Ann Stevens.
Hello, I am Lori Stevens. I'm the tag facilitator at Smart Intermediate. My address is 3230 West Dover Court in Davenport. I was also lucky enough to serve on the TAG Task Force Committee, where we came up with different proposals on how to save the district money. I believe that we really cannot say that high school is more important than middle school is more important than elementary. We really need to look at the whole child and nurture those skills and talents. There are some programs that maybe need revamped within our department, but the ones that are flourishing, like the ones in the middle school and the one at Central, I believe should remain as full-time, because we build those relationships with the students, and then without having that feedback once they enter high school, what are they going to do? There are opportunities for them, yes, but a TAG facilitator is their ally, is their voice that they have to give them different opportunities and offer different experiences. With my building, you know, we only have at the TAGs at the middle school honors classes in language arts and math. Okay? That's why, again, a TAG facilitator is very important at that level full-time, because I can also help with teachers in the classroom collaborate and offer differentiation. On the data teams, I offer differentiation. Also, being there co-teaching with the language arts and the math, I get to service more students also, and it's that training immediately when they have those higher level questions, the what if, like Jamie mentioned, that I can be there to try to help satisfy those needs. All the students want to learn. They have a passion, and one of the things in middle school, it's such an awkward age, we do try to help develop that passion with them for learning. We just again finished History Day, and we have many students going to state for National History Day. Yes, it's part of curriculum, but it's also a very important part of the DAG program, and without being full-time, we wouldn't be able to offer that.
Okay, thank you very much, Lori. Next is Judy Howell.
Hi, I'm Judy Howell, address 8298 New Liberty Road, Walcott. We open and enroll our daughters from a neighboring school district into the Davenport schools. My daughters attend Sudlow and Central. We've been thrilled with the education they've received and feel it's really quite a well-kept secret. We chose Davenport for numerous reasons. The school district offers more in the way of academic challenges, TAG, music, AP classes, and cultural diversities. I'm in favor of keeping the boundaries open. Central is landlocked with its location, and there isn't any space to build new homes. We have an inner city school that is sought after by families from outside of its boundaries. Central has a product that is working well, so please don't dismantle the school. Central will wither and die if you close the open transfer options. Each high school in Davenport has unique qualities, and I would really encourage you to maximize and optimize and let others know what the good accomplishments are. Please reach for the top academically, not just to the middle. I have one chance with my children's education, and this is it. You are competing against some strong schools in the surrounding districts, and sometimes you win in that competition, but it's not because your schools are all the same. You're winning because your schools are different and you provide options that other districts can't match. Please optimize the unique qualities that each high school has to offer. Students and families do have options in education. I haven't met a single person, especially a teenager, that enjoys being restricted or limited in what they perceive to be their rights or opportunities. I am here tonight to ask you to keep the open transfer option. You will draw more students into the districts with achievements than with restrictions. This is what makes Davenport District unique and gives you the chance to stand out from the competition. Thanks.
Thank you, Judy. I'll read through the next speakers, and then I'll call each of you up. We'll start with Wendy Park, Graham Atkinson, Noah Douglas, Jamie Hansen, David Stage, Sally Ellis, Erica Call, Hannah Harrington, Dixie Lambrecht Hovey. So we'll start with Wendy Park.
I'm Wendy Park, 1521 College Avenue. Both of my sons have been in the TAG program since kindergarten. I'm happy that the administration has seen the importance of TAG in high schools. Coincidentally, last Thursday, a co-worker who has a son in the Moline Elementary School system asked what I thought of Davenport schools. I was able to tell her that Davenport values their TAG students, and the administration listens to parents when there's a problem. All of the parents and students suddenly appearing at school board meetings is not simply a matter of wanting to keep a particular TAG teacher at Central, but hopefully to ensure that the needs are met for all of the TAG students in Davenport. It has been shown that TAG students being taught and working together will achieve more than they could individually. All grade levels need someone who can push our students to achieve all that we know they are capable of. We would like administration to reinstate the level of TAG staffing from 2 years ago and have full-time TAG facilitators at all intermediate and high schools. The TAG students are a group who could be gaining positive media attention, thereby promoting Davenport schools. If you give all of our TAG students unmatched opportunities, they, in turn, will produce remarkable results. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Next is Graham Atkinson.
Graham Atkinson, 1521 College Avenue. First of all, I would like to thank the administration for agreeing to continue full-time TAG at Central. However, reducing TAG at the intermediate level is not an option in the best interests of the students. I personally participated in many TAG activities at the intermediate level, such as mock trial, National History Day, Battle of the Books, and Knowledge Master Open. I also participated in a TAG-sponsored chess club, and in 6th grade competed in Math B, where the team went to the state level, finishing 7th as a team, and I was 2nd individually. These activities greatly helped me to assimilate myself into the culture of middle school and then into high school when I participated in those same activities. The TAG programs at the middle schools have been a great advertisement for the school district, appearing in newspapers and on various news channels. Local students I've met through TAG had chosen Davenport schools because of the TAG program. Studies have shown that students perform better when challenged and pushed by other students. Cutting down the TAG program may lessen this competition, and then students would be less inclined to learn. Standardized test scores would go down, and the district would receive less funding. So, in conclusion, reducing the TAG program at the intermediate level is not beneficial to the schools, the students, nor the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Next is Noah Douglas.
Noah Douglas, 2108 West 2nd Street. I've participated in almost every TAG program that was offered to me at Smart Intermediate. And each one of these programs has given me a different skill set that is crucial for my life. For example, mock trial has given me the ability to be comfortable in public speaking scenarios. Also, the specialized education system that TAG has provided has given me the opportunity to differentiate myself from other students and go as far and beyond as possible. Without this, I don't know if I would be able to stand out, and that is very important. Every program I've participated in has given me the opportunity to meet new students, make new friends, and learn new skill sets. If I hadn't participated in National History Day, National History Day was very crucial, and I've noticed because I participated in it, it gave me the skill sets needed for my various social studies classes, and I have had an A in those classes because of my participation in National History Day. If we cut these programs, that will mean that students coming after me into middle school won't have the same opportunities to differentiate themselves from other students that I have, which I feel is very important in having a successful life and career. Thank you.
Thank you, Noah. Next is Jamie Hansen.
Jamie Hansen, 2226 Scott Street in Davenport. I was here on February 11th when the high school TAG programs were initially cut and spoke, and I wasn't even going to come back necessarily tonight, but I did want to thank Dr. Tate and the administration for creating the TAG planning group. I had the honor of serving on it, and as a parent, it was extremely refreshing, and I couldn't let the night go by without saying how wonderful it was to see that sort of response in what you taught the students who came that evening on February 11th, what it is about the political process and how that even opens up discussion. With that being said, sitting in on the TAG planning group meetings, I think everyone in the room agreed on the value and importance of TAG. There wasn't a single person that left that room thinking that. I sat with an intermediate teacher, an elementary principal, a high school student, and I saw the intermediate teacher really have a conflict, recognizing the importance of high school TAG, wanting to reinstate it, almost to the detriment of her program. And it broke my heart to see that. And I know we have 2 intermediate teachers in the audience tonight, and Central students and parents came to also speak in support of that. And I just want you to know that it's not a dividing thing. It wasn't about Central coming and saying, just save our program. We really believe in the importance of TAG. So with that being said, with the 2% allowable growth, I know you received the recommendations from the TAG planning group. I'm hoping that we might be looking at something like a 29,000 or 21,000 shortfall. Please, please consider taking from the general fund if that is what it takes to keep TAG programming at the intermediate level, because it really is important for these kids. And I hope you refer back to some of those comments on February 11th. I was really touched by what some of those high school students said. And also regarding open boundaries and open Judy's comments, I've never met the woman, but I was quite impressed with that, and I couldn't agree more with what she said. There's a certain district that Central pulls from right now. There's not a lot of new developments, and I just don't think you want to, when you have students open enrolling into a school in that location in the city, I don't think you question why they're doing that. You just say, wow, that's a good thing. And that's not at a detriment to the other programs. All 3 high schools are strong, but I really, really urge you to consider keeping that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jamie. Next is David Stage.
Good evening, and thanks for letting me speak tonight. I was going to speak on the team's behalf. Dave Stage, 1907 West 3rd Street, Davenport, Iowa. With these guys talking about the TAG team, you know, really, that's pretty important to these guys. We like some of them spoke, we got our future doctors, our lawyers, and our senators, maybe a governor. We could even have a president in that TAG team. And I honestly think that's one program we don't want to give up for these guys. There's got to be other ways. And that's not one of them, to cut TAG. But I can't say any plainer than that. That's just, like I said, I was going to talk on the team's behalf, but with these guys up here, I didn't realize, you know, TAG was online like this, and that's some program that you guys really got to think hard about. That's downright nonsense to even think about getting rid of TAG. It takes a special guy to be in that TAG program. And that's downright wrong to even think about that. Have a nice night. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Next is Sally Ellis.
Good evening. Sally Ellis, 2216 North Nevada. Retired head custodian, 33 and a half years. With all the school districts are hurting with less state funding, a question was asked by a parent at an open forum. We don't see administrative cuts in the budget. The answer was, when we looked, we were in line with other districts. Well, with these difficult budget years ahead, it might be that all of these districts are top-heavy with administration. It was fine when money was there. Mission statement asks, what if? I asked, what if the administration could become a lean, mean service machine? Lead us all by example. Keep our students and teachers and staff and parents safe. Leave class sizes alone. Leave the TAG program alone. Help our teachers have a clean, well-maintained work environment. Do not make it hard on those teaching our children. With your committed family custodial maintenance department, again, I ask, what if? Contract cleaning services, energy savings, forget that. Recycling, forget that. Help for teachers, PTAs, groups, and parents, forget about that too. Boiler safety for all, forget that. Boiler explosions can take out half of a building. Yeah, and you say, well, yeah, we ain't never had nothing like that. Yeah, but we have safeties on our boilers. Yes, that's true. But who's checking those safeties? Who's checking those safeties every day in your buildings? Your custodial department. They keep them safe in the daytime and at night. God darn, that went fast. The story continues next board meeting.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. Erica?
Well, I thought I was going to be able to pass this one up, but I'm up here anyway. So I'm Erica Call, 1852 Westminster Circle, Davenport. First of all, I would like to echo the sentiments and fully support all the issues that are going on with TAG right now. I agree with the support of the high school. I can't thank you all enough for supporting that, as well as if we could add to the intermediate schools, that would be wonderful as well. Tonight, you guys are going to be talking about the boundaries. In my opinion, especially at the high school level, you don't have a boundary problem. You have a perception problem. The perception of the 3 schools in the Davenport district. You have the uniqueness of having 3 public high schools. What we don't have, or what the perception is that we don't have, is equality. Well, until you start cloning teachers, and then maybe students as well, you're never going to have true equality. What you're going to have is you're going to have programs in each of the high school that need to be supported and just expounded on and improved on, so that when somebody is looking to say, oh, do I want to stay in Davenport, that's not even their issue. Their issue is that, oh my goodness, we have 3 fabulous high schools. How do I even decide? So take the strengths of each of the high schools, build on those strengths, so that the school system looks so fantastic that nobody wants to leave and people are clamoring to come in. Your answer is not changing the boundaries. Your answer is changing the perception. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Next is Hannah Harrington.
My name is Hannah Harrington, and I live at 936 Colony Drive, Davenport, Iowa. I'm here to talk about the North High vocal music trip that we just came from today and got home from at 11 o'clock. There were 67 students that went to New York City, which was half of the music program, with 23 adults, including 2 of our teachers, Mr. Reverts and Miss Hendricks, and our accompanist, Miss McCune. We traveled to New York City and saw 3 Broadway shows, including Wicked, Newsies, and Jersey Boys. They were all 3 phenomenal shows. We also visited the 9/11 Memorial, which is outstanding and really informational and moving. And we went on a Hudson River cruise to go see the Statue of Liberty. Unfortunately, we couldn't actually visit Ellis Island from the Hurricane Sandy, but we visited Chinatown and Times Square. We also, on one of our tours, went to Washington Square Garden and sang and danced, where groups of people came and watched us as we did that. And we also sang at St. Malachi's Church, which is the church for actors, which was really well to say that we sang in New York City. It was an outstanding trip, and we represented the Davenport School District very well. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Next is Dixie Lambrecht-Hovey.
Dixie Lambrecht-Hovey, 2719 LeClaire Street, and I'm here to speak about the TAG program. Thank you for your time, the opportunity to speak to you all, and your interest in participating in and carrying out of an open process. The issues you face and decisions you must make are not easy ones. Your interest, however, in working with community members to exchange knowledge and share information and ideas on how to best address these issues while meeting the needs of those you serve certainly does not go unnoticed. Your willingness to create a committee, including students and parents, to discuss alternate solutions with regard to the TAG program and the budget issues shows your concerns for these students. I believe I speak on behalf of many parents of TAG students in saying that I am pleased that you understand the importance of having a full-time TAG program at each of the high schools to meet the needs of these exceptional young people, and that you agree that keeping these teachers in their current roles will only serve to help them further grow the programs they have already been heavily involved in developing, and to continue to forge stronger relationships and best meet the needs of the students participating in them. My daughter received news today indicating that her Battle of the Books team scored third highest excuse me, in the state of Iowa amongst approximately 60 teams, qualifying them to proudly represent our district and Central High School at the state level of competition next month. Without the full-time TAG program this may not have been an option for students such as mine. Not to mention that our TAG teams qualifying at state level in various competitions is a great it gets good press and is a good marketing tool for our district. Thank you for seeing the importance of this full-time program, but on a final note, I would also like you to consider how important TAG is at all levels and consider allocating additional funding from the general fund in support of having full-time TAG at all levels. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Dixie. And I want to say thanks to all of you out there, everybody that comes to our meetings, that participates in our meetings, and all of you have the opportunity to speak at Open Forum, and I just want to say thank you to all of you, Rachel, Alexandra, Gordon, Bruce, Jamie, Lori, Judy, Wendy, Graham, Noah, Jamie, David, Sally, Erica, Hannah, and Dixie. It really is important when you come up and speak to the board. The board is listening, and we appreciate your input. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
Mr. President.
Director Crumwitty.
I move the consent agenda as presented by the administration.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Before moving on with the vote, I want to point out that item B, contracts, this is the first time that that type of contract will appear in the consent agenda. It's something that we decided on some time ago. I just wanted to highlight that it's actually occurring. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll call for the vote. Director Crumwitty.
Yes.
Director Kluhl.
Yes.
Director Sherwood.
Yes.
Director Robertson.
Yes.
Director DeFoe.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion regarding approval of bills?
Mr. President.
Director Kluhl.
I move that the board approve the following resolution as recommended by administration for adoption of the bills from the bill listing periods of February 21st, 2013 through March 6th of 2013, and that was a special release of checks with the President's approval. The resolution is as follows. Resolved that all claims presented to the board having been duly certified as correct by the Secretary, reviewed by the administration and board members, and they are hereby audited and allowed as just claims and warrants drawn on the Treasury for the several amounts. Further resolved, the payment of claims and salaries be approved as presented for the periods 21 February 2013 through 6 March 2013 with the following voided checks. Those being checks number 304575, payable to Gail Elizabeth Blugaw in the amount of $203.96. That was a check that needed to go through payroll. And check number 304595, payable to Club Z in-home tutoring in the amount of $122.50, that being the wrong amount.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Call for the vote. Director Kluhl.
Yes.
Director Robertson.
Yes.
Director Sherwood.
Yes.
Director Crumwitty.
Yes.
Director DeFoe.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Superintendent report.
Thank you, Mr. President. To save some time, I'd like to turn to Andre, only a student. Thanks for coming tonight.
Oh, you're welcome. I guess I'll just represent everyone. So from West, the girls bowling team went to state in Des Moines, and they won 3rd place. The ROTC won 3rd place trophies at the 13th annual Bellevue drill competition. The 9th grade academy raised $600 for pennies for patients. And West had 2 Destination Imagination teams qualify for state tournament in early April. From North, the North High School boys bowling team won state on Tuesday, and they set a new state record. And for the Kimberly Center, 18 students went to Circa 21 for a day of workshops to see musicals. The Hank Williams story on February 28th. Students had a great time participating in the workshops in addition to watching the musical. And also, students throughout the school district attended a seminar led by George Curry, and the students learned to overcome obstacles in life and doing their best and staying in school. That's it.
Thank you, Andre. That's my report, sir.
Thank you, Superintendent Tate, and thank you, Andre. Nice report. We'll move on to other items requiring action. Is there a motion regarding rate increase for breakfast and lunch prices?
Mr. President?
Director Kluhl.
I move that the board approve the administration's recommendation on meal prices for the 2013-2014 school year. That being breakfast, pre-K being $1, no change, elementary $1, which is a 10-cent increase, intermediate and high school $1.25, which is a 10-cent increase, adult student second meal $1.75, which is a 15-cent increase, reduced price students 30 cents, which is no change. Lunch, pre-K, $2.10, no change. Elementary, $2.10, which is a 10-cent increase. Intermediate, $2.30, a 10-cent increase. High school, $2.50, which is also a 10-cent increase. Elementary adult, $3.60, a 35-cent increase. Secondary adult student second meal, $3.60, which is a 10-cent increase. And reduced price students, 40 cents, which is no change.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director DeFau.
For the public and audience's sake, I'm wondering if we might have an explanation as to the need for increase at this time.
Ms. Tangham, would you take care of that, please?
Mickey's here.
Oh,
Mickey's here.
I didn't see you in the crowd, Mickey. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Mickey Carrington, Food Service Supervisor. The reason for the increase is there's a new federal mandate that came with the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act that says we basically have to reach an average for the coming year of 259, and our current average is about 217. So we're increasing by 10 cents, which is the minimal amount or the maximum amount that the federal government allows. So we're trying to do it at that until we get to that federal mandate level.
Is that sufficient? Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director Kluhl.
Yes.
Director Sherwood.
Yes.
Director Crumwitty.
Yes.
Director Robertson.
Yes.
Director DeFau.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. I have a motion regarding letters training.
Mr. President,
Director Sherwood.
I move the board to accept the administration recommendation with a contract with Cambium Education Incorporated for $96,000 for letters training, language essentials for teachers of reading and spelling for cohort group number 8 and cohort group number 9.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Mr. President?
Oh, excuse me. Director Sherwood.
Yeah, I just want to comment that I continue to receive positive feedback from teachers all over the district at every level that this is some of the best training they've ever had. So congratulations to Patty Pace and Tracy and everybody else that's been involved in this.
Thank you. Director Crumwitty.
I don't see Julie here, but I'm wondering if someone could explain to the public what that means, cohort 8 and cohort 9.
Cohorts 8 and 9 will be the first and second grade teachers, kindergarten and second grade teachers from what's considered our yellow schools and our matrix. The first grade teachers received that training this year. So we're talking about 80 teachers, 16 days each.
Okay. So, again, for everyone's information, will all of our teachers eventually get through the letters training in our district?
Our initial plan is kindergarten through second grade, and then we have to see how the resources go. And what we're trying to do is train our own trainers so we don't have to spend this level of money in the future, that we can have our own trainers internally.
Okay, thank you.
Director Sherwood.
Just a clarification, it's also true, Art, that we've trained all the special ed folks. Isn't that true?
Yes, thank you for that clarification.
Director Kluhl.
Just another caveat here to all those folks that weren't at the our last committee of the whole meeting when we had a presentation on letters. It was a most amazing thing, this letters program, which helps teachers to fully capitalize on their talents. You know, we oftentimes talk here on the board and we hear from teachers and others that, you know, here's just another flavor of the day bit of training, and that's what it sounds like to you all out there as we prove, you know, item B here in the agenda, but it's so much more than that. As we heard from teachers who talked about individual students who, without this type of training, had the skills perhaps but didn't know how to do it. So what it ends up being is an affirmation of teachers' talents, in that this letters program helps to bring out the artistry in teaching, which I think is what we need to aspire to and inspire all of our teachers to do. So it makes it a lot easier to approve this tonight for myself after having had that presentation last Monday.
Thank you. Director Robertson.
Another thing that I'd like to follow up on was how excited the teachers were when they talked about how it had helped them close the gap in terms of, you know, their interaction with certain students. That they thought they had to raise the level of expectation. So I thought that was pretty good.
Anything else? All right, we'll call for the vote. Director Sherwood. Director Crumwoody.
Yes.
Director DeFoe.
Yes.
Director Kluhl.
Yes.
Director Robertson.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. Move on to discussion item, budget. Superintendent Tate.
Thank you, Mr. President. We want to do this in two parts: a review of budget language, the fund balance, the spending authority, and unspent balance, remembering that there's a couple things that are causing us to make reductions this year and for the next 4 years, and one of them is our enrollment, but the second part is our unspent balance and keeping what we consider to be the proper amount of money in that line item. So, Marcia, would you go through some of the cogent points of the budget review memo that you handed out?
The board has been presented with a recommendation to cut $3.25 million each year over the next 5 years. The district has received notice from the Department of Ed that our unspent balance has the potential to go negative, and that's really key to what we need to look at when we're looking at our budget reductions. The district's audit did show a fund balance, that's a cash balance of over $15 million on June 30th of 2012. And again, a fund balance would be equivalent to a for-profit's net worth, or if we were to close the doors on June 30th, having recognized all of our revenue and paid all of our bills, this is what we would have left over is $15.7 million. The district has an estimated unspent balance of $8.9 million. Unspent balance is the budget authority that we get from the state. And so you can see that we're not in alignment with our fund balance and our unspent balance. Our unspent balance is that rule that we are held to at the state level. It is illegal to overspend your spending authority or your unspent balance. Unspent balance is just spending authority that is left over at the end of the year that accumulates year after year. But we are in jeopardy of overspending that if we do not make reductions, and that's why we've made the recommendation of $3.25 million each year over the next 5 years. Even though we have fund balance, that fund balance is sitting there to help us out when we are cash-strapped, if you will. Several years ago, when the state cut our funding mid-year, we had to rely upon that cash balance to get us through because it was mid-year, and we didn't have to make reductions in 1 year. In the next year, we didn't have to make as significant amount of reductions, again, because we had a cash balance that we could draw upon. So that's the importance of having a fund balance or a cash balance in the district, are for those times when our funding may not come through, or the state would decide to reduce our funding mid-year, as they have done a couple of times. But the spending authority is the issue because that is what you cannot overspend. And so looking at our projections, that's why we've made the recommendation of $3.25 million each year over the next 5 years in order to keep from overspending that spending authority, but also to meet that target that we had set up with the board, that we have an $8 million spending authority or unspent balance at the end of 5 years.
Any questions about that before we move on to discussion of the budget reductions? Thank you, Marcia. On the next sheet, budget update for the board meeting March 18th. On the first page, I bring your attention to the reductions which we'll need to make depending upon the level of allowable growth that we get from the state. 0% is $4.1 million. If it's a 1%, it'd be 2.7. If it's a 2%, it'd be a 3.2. If it's a 3%, I think it's a 2.6 rather than a 3.6. And a 4% would be a $2.1 million. So we have heard people at the state talk about 0, 2, and 4. The fact that we do not know which it's going to be means that we're going to have to plan for any contingency. Marcia and I would like to recommend tonight that you look at for your planning a 2% allowable growth, and that we look for $3.2 million worth of reductions, and that you identify them or have serious enough discussion that we can begin to see what sort of things that you are looking for in order to reduce $3.2 million, because we will have to put a budget in the newspaper shortly. You still have time to discuss it after that, but my hope is tonight that you will be able to discuss and we can look into the face about a $3.2 million reduction. And with that, we've provided on the second page some of the areas of reduction that have been discussed. The early retirement with a savings of about $980,000, an insurance holiday for $2 million, a Central North bus for $88,000, across the board reduction of 5%, and discretionary funds both at the department and the school level. And then you have some other levels which have been considered in the past, and you ask us to at least keep on the forefront paid conditional busing, $132,000, retiree subrate of $47,731, sports position of $36,000, and class size for elementary $300,000. So tonight, again, I would like to see if we can reach agreement on about $3.2 million in reductions, which, again, you'll continue to discuss at your subsequent meetings.
Are you prepared for questions and discussion? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Director Robertson.
This is for Dr. Tate and Marcia. The question I have is that have we been approved for 2% allowable growth? And if the answer to that question is no, then why aren't we preparing a budget at 0?
No, we have not been approved for 2% allowable growth. The legislature has yet to act on the budget. The reason that we use 2% is because of the two proposals that have been made in the legislature. One was 2%, one was 4%. I don't believe that they will go to 0, but we are using the 2%, and if it does come in at 0, it just means that we've got that much more to reduce for next year.
Thank you.
Director Kluhl.
If there is a legislator out there somewhere in the audience or listening in, I just would like you to know that this is the kind of situation that the failure to meet the requirements of public law has put the school district into. The legislature, by state code, is required to establish the allowable growth rate for the out years within 30 days of presentation of the governor's budget, which would be about the 30th of January. They failed to meet that requirement. They broke that law last year, and they've broken it again this year. And so that's why this board is sitting here making these decisions tonight. So I just want to put a plea in for those folks who control the budget to follow the law. I'm not asking for any more than that, and I don't think it's too much to ask.
Director DeFile.
For purposes of our conversation tonight and the recommended reductions that are before us, I would like the board to at least consider including paid conditional busing as those budget recommendations, and in doing so, reduce the across-the-board reduction of 5% down to, it looks like we could reduce that to 2.5% and still recognize the same savings. I'm really concerned about our cutting site budgets again by an additional 5% when we've gone to that well so many times, and that's money that benefits our buildings in myriad of ways. And I think that is a reasonable trade-off in my mind. So I would like that as part of this conversation.
Additional discussion? Director Sherwood?
Yeah, and I think, I'm not sure how it works as far as the contracts are concerned, but I do have some concerns about the kinds of cuts we're talking about, and whether or not the administration is fully participating in this. I think I would like to know what a 5% reduction in administrative, across-the-board administrative salaries would take us to down to the associate principal level, from the top right on down, and what that looks like as far as contract requirements and how we would do that. There's an old expression from those that have much is expected, and so while we don't look any different maybe than other districts in the state, we have closed several high schools in recent years without a reduction in administration, and I think that if we're going to ask the kids and the teachers to take a hit on materials, we need to ask perhaps administrators to take a little hit too.
The across-the-board reductions are not personnel, discretionary fund.
I
Okay.
understand that, but it's the ability of them to do their jobs, and often those 5% cuts that we take out of those supplies come out of the pockets of teachers in reality, because they make that up, and so it isn't that it doesn't hurt their salary, because it does.
I guess, excuse me, I've got to ask for a little bit of clarification there. When you say a 5% reduction in administration, is it compensation? Is it salary? Is it everything? What are you talking about?
Yeah, and that's a good question. I don't have a complete answer for it, but it would depend on what we're looking at, what kind of money we're looking at, I guess. Because if it's the whole package, it may be 5%. If it's or I'm sorry, if it's salaries, it may be less actually. But I want to see what kind of an impact that would have on this whole budget before we do other things.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. Additional discussion. Director Crumwoody, did you want to speak?
Just for clarification, tonight what we need to do is give you, Dr. Tate, the approval of the $3.2 million. We can still continue further discussion as far as what exactly those reductions are. 3.2.
If it's a 2%.
If it's a 2%.
Allowable growth, we're looking at 3.2. Yes, we need to know, are we able to find 3.2% in reduction somewhere? Exactly where it comes from, we can continue to talk about.
But we can discuss that at a later time,
Right.
not necessarily making changes in what is being recommended here as far as across-the-board reductions, Central North Bus, those kinds of things.
Except I would like to hear comments from the board so we'll know which direction to go. Do we need more information? Are some of these things off the table? There's something that's not here that is on the table.
Director Robertson, your mic isn't on.
Dr. Tate, when you talk about paid conditional busing, that is not to be considered this year, or is that for future years, or what?
No, that would be this year. That's someone asked to bring it forward, and Director DeFow is talking about doing it now in lieu of the entire 5% across-the-board reduction.
Okay, Director DeFow had mentioned that if we could bring this forward, would that be an option that we would be able to reduce across-the-board cut by 2.5% approximately?
Approximately, yes.
Okay. Then what kind of hardship would that create for the people that no longer will have that option of the paid conditional busing?
Well, it's going to be multi-layer. They're depending on it. They use it. Whether it'll mean they can't go to the school of their choice, I just can't be certain. I mean, they're all writing because it's convenient. They're all writing because it takes them somewhere they need to go that either they can't take their student or it's inconvenient to take them. But I'm sure it's just many reasons on why people use it.
Okay, the other question I have following up with that, then what part, or if any, would the city bus play in that if we actually reduce those routes, or it wouldn't play a part in it?
It might, in fact. It could be that these routes are a little bit more convenient. They're closer than the city bus. So if, in fact, we didn't have the paid conditional, then it might use the city bus more.
Thank you, sir.
Director Sherwood?
Yeah, and in that same item, paid conditional busing, in a conversation I had with Dr. Amelia, it's got to be a year ago now, I thought there was an intermediate position as well, that it didn't have to be all of it, it could be part of it. And I think you said within the school boundaries itself, contained within, that would be one option contained within the school boundaries. I'd like to see this broken down as far as cost, because it does have an impact, I think, Larry, on these folks, and if we can minimize that, I'd like to see this broken down with cost as far as within the school boundary and outside of the school boundary. And I also want to put back in this equalizing the sub-rate. It's nice that we give teachers, the certified people extra dough. That's very nice, and being one of those guys, I appreciate the money. But in fairness, everybody that walks in that classroom has to do the same job, and we're going to expect them to do a good job. They ought to be making the same rate. So I think we should make sure that's back into the conversation as well. And that's all I got for right now.
Director Cromody?
Once again, I understand our purpose tonight is to approve the $3.2 million cut, not specifically talk about or recommend certain areas. And we can do this at a later date, but to give Dr. Tate the direction that we can reduce $3.2 million, and exactly how we do that might include some of the things that you're talking about. I think, one of the other suggestions is to increase class size at the elementary by 1 student. We need to talk about that. That's a $300,000 savings right there. And the paid conditional busing, my concern is it's middle of March, folks. And if you change that, and this was my same concern last year, it's getting pretty late to let those people know that they can't do that. And people need some advance notice, a long notice, to make sure that they understand that, no longer are we going to provide that to the people in this district. So I'm concerned about doing it in mid-March.
Additional discussion? Director DeFow.
I understand that was a concern that you expressed
last year, and that we had the conversation last year, and at that time we also agreed that we would take it off the table for this current budget, but that we were not removing it entirely. So I don't believe that it's coming completely unaware to people that this has continued to be a topic of conversation. I think we have referenced it on several occasions in the course of this year as to whether or not we wanted to continue pursuing that. And I believe as early as last December, we talked about the budget and the possibility of revisiting that subject matter. As it relates to, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, that what Dr. Tate has presented tonight is what he would move forward with in terms of reaching that 3.2 budget reduction, and that the other items are subject for consideration. So what I'm hearing Dr. Tate say is that this is the direction he's going to take without any other conversation from us. So I do think this is the time for us to at least give some sense as to whether or not we're willing to consider alternatives.
Three items, or four items, is $3.3 million. So we've really made it. So I think your discussion should be, is there any of those you don't want me to take? Early retirement we already have. Do you not want me to take the insurance holiday? Do you not want me to take Central North Bus? Or there is some discussion about across-the-board reduction. So that's really what I need to hear.
And I would reiterate that I, in fact, would like to minimize the across-the-board reductions, especially for the schools, as much as we possibly can, given the fact that in all but the last 6 years, our buildings have sustained budget reductions, and we've just gone to that well, in my mind, way too frequently.
Director Sherwood?
And I want to just back up what Nikki's saying. I feel exactly the same about the 5%. That's happened way too often. It's just too easy to do it. Like it doesn't have an impact. It has after a collective impact. It's enormous, and it really affects the culture in these buildings when we do these kinds of things. So if we can find other sources, I'd much rather do that.
Director Cromedy?
And I certainly am in agreement with that. Being in a building, I know what impact that has. So I would agree with that. But what I'm saying is it doesn't necessarily have to be paid conditional busing. It can be other items to come up with that. But what we're giving Dr. Tate direction tonight on is it's going to be $3.2 million that we're saying yes. But it may mean a 2.5% decrease in the budgets in the schools and the departments instead of a 5%. We don't have to decide where those other dollars come from tonight.
But I heard Dr. Tate ask for direction.
But I also heard him say we could have future discussions about other items to reduce.
Excuse me. I don't want to have a debate between two board members. Superintendent Tate, could you clarify your position with respect to what kind of direction you're needing from the board tonight?
Well, here's what I've heard. Everybody is in for the early retirement, the insurance holiday, and the Central North Bus. There's some who say let's reconsider the across-the-board 5% reduction. To do that, you can consider including paid conditional busing. You're looking for some numbers for reduction in administrative salary, and there's been some talk about the sub-rate. So that's what I've heard, and those are things that seem to be open for discussion.
And to clarify, though, this difference of thought between the board members, are you looking for that kind of direction, or are you simply looking for a number tonight?
If, in fact, what I just said is all that's in consideration, we're good. But if there are 4, 5, or 6 other things, then that will affect the line items when we do a budget. So, again, I have what's on here across the board is in question. Paid conditional is up. The sub-rate is up. and I need to bring figures back on administrative salaries.
Okay, thank you for that. Director Kluhl.
What we have here is the Resource Allocation Committee's recommendations for areas to consider budget reductions in. I would like to have the administration's consideration on the 5% across the board reduction.
I think we're probably going to have to include it, but I'd rather have it at the departments and leave the sites off it. So that would reduce it. Marcia, what would that look like if it was just departments 5%?
Departments is approximately $120,000 of that total.
What sort of things are we talking about when we're talking about departments? What kind of reductions are we looking at, Marcia? What are they going to cut?
Department budgets, paying for postage, maintenance agreements, software licenses, printing, supplies, equipment, those sorts of things. I mean, it's going to vary by department.
Director DeFile.
In doing that, though, that still leaves us with a $147,000 hole to fill. The difference between what you're saying and across the board 5% would be and what a department only 5% would be. So it still seems to me that we're going to have to fill that hole with something.
Anybody else? Director Kluhl.
Well, I hate to be a burden, but I have something that I think that we need to reduce our estimated savings by. The TAG program has come up when we've heard tonight, and a lot of appreciation for what the superintendent has done in terms of bringing people together to discuss the program. And I think there's a huge wake behind the dollars to be saved. We're talking from $25,000 to $100,000 at the three options that we've got here that the committee came up with. I think we're penny wise and pound foolish to dismiss the possibility that we might put anywhere from $29,000 to $92,000 into this program to provide a viable TAG program in our district. I think that districts around us are building these programs and that it sends the wrong signal to other districts. And I say that as a board member, and I'm concerned about delving into issues which aren't the board's prerogative. But I think that this is such an important issue to this district that we're talking about $3.3 million, $100,000. I think that what I would like to see is the committee take a look at that in terms of recognizing that perhaps the board would be willing to allow that amount of indebtedness up to $100,000 to secure the TAG program for the Davenport School District.
Director Robertson.
A question for Dr. Tate. I was talking to some people that were on the committee, and my understanding is that they had come to an agreement about the TAG program and what it was going to look like. Is that true or not true?
There was a majority opinion, and you heard people talk about one of the issues, and that was that we couldn't afford a full TAG teacher at each middle school. So if you'll permit me, let me go over the three options that that group looked at. If we had a zero allowable growth scenario, that would require reductions of $50,000 next year, which is one teacher. And that's what started this whole thing, that we have to budget on zero allowable growth. So if we did that, we looked at 15 total teachers, and the group decided to put one FTE tag at Central, North, and West, a full-time teacher at Walcott for both the K-8, a .5 at J.B. Young, a .5 at each of the remaining intermediates, and then a .5 for each elementary school. That's not a likely scenario, but we had to look at it, and that's where we started. The next scenario was an allowable growth of a 2%. And the group decided if we had that, we'd have 3 FTE that would be devoted to the high school. So that's 1 for Central, 1 for North, and 1 for West. Right now there is 1 teacher at Central, and West and North are splitting a teacher, a tag teacher. That would, with the 2% allowable growth, they were looking at a half a teacher for each of the elementary schools, and then what would be left is 5 tag teachers for Walcott, J.B. Young, Williams, Smart, Sudlow, and Wood. So not quite a full teacher per. They'd have to decide how to split that up. With 2% allowable growth, we're still short $29,000. Now, the Cadillac, which everybody said this is really what we'd love to have, would be a tag teacher at each of the high schools, a tag teacher at each of the middle school, the intermediate schools, all 6, and then elementary schools would still have 0.5, and that'd be 17 teachers, and the deficit there, we need $92,000 to do that.
This is a follow-up question to that. Marcia, maybe you can help me out with this. The question I have is there a possibility that from year to year we might be able to get some grant money to help, you know, fill that void so that we don't have to cut our tag program? Is that a possibility or not?
I'm not currently aware of any grant programs for that type of funding. That's not to say they're not out there, but I'm not aware of any right now.
Director Clough.
And just to caveat again, the reason that I bring this up is because I think that it's the board's responsibility to provide equitable resources for all of our schools. As one of the speakers tonight mentioned, though, there is possibly an opportunity to do some of these programs better. So while it's the board's responsibility to assure equity of resources, I would rely on administration to make sure that the resources that we have placed at each of our schools provides a level of quality of education that is what we expect from a district of distinction. And I perceive that that perhaps doesn't take place across the board. So equitable resources in and of itself doesn't make it equitable. It'll take teachers who are willing to provide that level of excellence.
Director Sherwood.
And Dr. Tate, on the 2% option that you outlined, what would it cost us additionally just to make sure that every intermediate had a full-time person? You were short 0.5, something like that.
Well, that'd be another half-time teacher, so you're short 29,000. Add another 35, so you know 64,000.
64,000. Well, that's a option I would support, I guess, Rich.
Anybody else? I've got a question and maybe clarification. If you could explain again, and I think at the last committee of the whole you explained the timeline, but we've got tonight, and next week we have one more regular meeting. We have a committee of the whole on the 1st, and the 8th is when we will actually vote on and certify the budget. Your publication is going to occur either after, is it after tonight?
It has to occur sometime between the 19th and the 29th of March.
So we would actually have, next meeting is going to be it.
I'm not sure next meeting would give us enough time because I don't know what the leeway that the paper needs for us to get it down to them, and they need so many days before they can put it in the paper.
Yeah,
so I don't know what that time
10 or 20 days or something. So really what I think the administration is asking for is that number tonight so that you can publish it even as early as you need to, but it may be before the next meeting. Thank you for that clarification. Additional discussion? Well, I've got a few things I would say then. And as I review my notes, I think, boy, boy, maybe I am that ogre that I was described as one time. Because in general, I do support the additional areas for consideration, the paid conditional busing, the retiree subrate. I've always been opposed as much as I can be to the across-the-board reductions. And I don't know where I've been with TAG, but I have to say that I do support Director Kluhl's position. And I think to the extent that if I had all of my druthers on these things, I would rather reduce our reductions this year and continue to have an appropriate tag and then use some of these. But I don't think we're going to have enough savings even in these to come up with a $3.2 million reduction. I don't know what it would be. I think, and you said, I think what we can do, we can publish the high and we can come down. We just can't go above, right? So if we went ahead and authorized conceptually a $3.2 million reduction, you published it, and then in the next meeting we came up with 3.12 or whatever it was, that would be acceptable. Okay. Any other discussion? Director Robertson.
The one reminder for me, and I hope the public will be able to understand this, when we talk about reduction and then Director Kluhl talk about the TAG program and it becomes our responsibility to fund that, we have X amount of dollars. So if we don't have enough money in the beginning, then we have to figure out other ways to come up with that money. So we have to look deeper into our operation to come up with that money, because we do think the educational opportunity is the most important thing that we do, okay? We believe that. So we can't talk out one side about doing these things and then say, well, you know, we can't look at this. We have to be responsible to the Davenport Community School District and say that we want to make sure that our kids get the best possible education they can. Therefore, everything is on the table, and we have to look at it. I think we tiptoe around that, but I think the public needs to hear that. We need to look at all options so that we can make sure that we are able to do some of the things that Director Kluhl is talking about. And it's not easy, folks. It's very, very painful. Thank you.
Director Cromedy.
And I appreciate you, Dr. Robertson, saying that. Doctor.
That's fine. That's fine.
Director.
Yeah, I've been called Robertson. That before, so that's fine.
I, too, feel that we need to look at everything, and that's why I also, you know, I've been really reluctant to talk about class size, as most of this board has been for years. But I don't hear much conversation about that tonight, about adding one more student at each grade level in the elementary, which would save us $300,000 right there. So, again, what I said earlier, we're looking at $3.2 million. Hopefully, we can come back and decide exactly where those extra dollars are going to come from. But I don't think we take anything off the board. I agree with you.
Additional discussion? Superintendent Tate, do you have a clear idea of where the board is?
Do you have enough for what you need for the newspaper?
I'm going to go ahead with the $3.2 million, and then if it comes in at something lower, we've at least published on the high side.
Okay. And I have enough to keep going.
Okay. Well, thank you, board, for all of your participation and thoughts in this. Director Robertson.
Before you move on, Marcia, so when you publish that in the newspaper, does that have a question mark? Since we don't know what the allowable growth is going to be? Because when people read things in the newspaper, it becomes law. And then they think, well, this is what we're going to get. And if we have to come back and say, well, we got 1%. Now we have to cut additionally. So will there be some explanation, or you would just publish it and say this is our budget?
We just have a format that the state gives us to publish it.
Okay.
And that's the publication that will go in there. This will be the only medium that we'll have to relay to folks that it's published at a 0%, and if the state legislature does something else, it will adjust.
So if that happened, then Dr. Taylor have a lot of explaining to do. I'm being facetious, thank you.
All right, thank you. Superintendent Tate, you want to lead us on a boundaries discussion?
I passed out excerpts from the pertinent legal documents relative to boundaries and transfers, Davenport Community School District Diversity Plan adopted on February 11, 2008, and our board policy 50111 students attendance centers, just so we can refer to us as we go through this discussion. There's 8 areas that I need to discuss with the board tonight. I want to caution people in the audience, these are not final recommendations. These are still discussions with the board. Last time we met, they gave me some things, some homework to do on boundaries. So what I'm coming back with is my homework, and then get some further guidance from you. We do have another discussion next Monday. So tomorrow and the next few days, whatever you've given me in the way of additional homework, we'll take care of. The first thing you asked me to do was to find a way to address the overcrowding at Washington, Harrison, and Garfield schools right away. And first under is A. We began on the 4th of March to disapprove any requests to move to those schools from outside of their attendance area. We're also trying to work with those schools, although it's not going to cut down the number of students there, is if people move into the area, we want to see if we can get them in their classrooms rather than bus them across the town. We need to start getting people in the schools where they live. So we're going to take our usual extraordinary measures of adding class aides or forming multi-age classrooms or clustering, and this will be for next school year. But the 2 things we can do now is just stop transfers into the schools. Now, you can consider and direct me to actually move out a certain amount of out-of-boundary students who are going to these schools right now and say, we can't afford to have you there. These schools are subscribed and as a facility, and you should move out. So you'd have to tell me if you have any feeling that you want me to begin to look at that and come back with a recommendation. So I'd like to discuss these as we go down and see what you think about that.
Anybody? Director DeFau.
I couldn't in good conscience advocate that we remove children from the existing building that they're enrolled in. I would suggest that we're cautious in how we grandfather younger siblings. If we have an outgoing 5th grader, does that incoming kindergartner need to go to that same elementary that they were open enrolled to, or should that kindergartner be returned to the home school?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
In that instance, I could advocate for that incoming kindergarten student not to go to the open enrolled school. But if you have, a 3rd grader and an outgoing 5th grader, obviously that 3rd grader would remain for continuity.
Okay.
In my opinion.
Anybody else? Wow. No, Director Sherwood?
I just don't want to agree with what Nikki said. I have the same feelings. Yeah.
Director Cromwell.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. I think that I would be reluctant to support pulling the students out who are already there, but I too am concerned about the grandfathering. I know this came up a lot in the forums that we had, and listening to Director Zamora several weeks ago talk about that is, when we start grandfathering, when do we stop grandfathering, and how is that going to impact our class sizes in our schools? So I think we need to be really careful about that whole concept of grandfathering in, but I would be very reluctant. the kids who are presently there, to pull them out, encourage them to go to their new school, but not to take them out.
Director Robertson.
Students that live in these particular areas should have the right to go to those schools. And when we go to talking about a reluctance to do something with some other students that, by their wish, they were allowed to go to that school. I have said this all along, if we get to the point in time to where we don't do that, then I don't know why we would say that open boundaries for high school is more important than it is for grade school or elementary schools. People want their kids to go to a certain place, and I've heard that conversation all night about Central High School. And Harrison is in the area that I have lived for a long time, and I know I can speak to that. People move there because they want their kids to go there. So if we're saying that there are kids from someplace else that are already there, and now people that moved into the area are going to have their kids bus someplace else, I'm not supportive of that.
Anybody else? I imagine we'll have an opportunity, even though you have several of these, if there were some passion to come back to one.
Oh, sure.
So,
absolutely.
Okay. If there's no other discussion, why don't we move on?
Going to B, you had asked me to see if we could preserve Kimberly Village to be in the Harrison Elementary School attendance area. And we've done that, and I provided you, and I'll go over what, because I misspoke on number 4, and I've also provided you the diagrams, because what you did, you took the new boundaries that we had gone out to the public forums, and this is the change you asked me to make. Scott's in Hawaii right now, or we'd have it up here and we could look at it, and he's the only one that knows how to throw those up, so we'll get somebody cross-trained. In order to bring Kimberly Village back into Harrison, there's 92 students. They were going to go to Adams, so we restored them back in the Harrison boundary. We took 50 students in the northwest corner of Harrison to go to Fillmore. We took 58 students in the northeast corner of Harrison to go to Truman. And although they look like they're far away from Truman, they are bused right now to Fillmore, so they'll still get on a bus. They won't go any further than they are now to go to Truman. 51 students in the, I should say, the southeast corner of Fillmore will now go to Truman. Now, Truman doesn't have the room for all those students if they all of a sudden went. There is going to be grandfathering, so they're not going to. But they are in the next 2 or 3 years to receive 3 to 5 classrooms. So certainly as we build those classrooms, then the grandfathering will end, and there will be room for those 51 students at Truman. Adams is not going to get the 92 students from Kimberly Village, but they'll keep 65 students, which were to go to Wilson under the new boundaries. Wilson will not get the 65 students from Adams in the north, and will retain 59 students in the south who are going to Jackson. So in some cases, they're just retaining students. And 38 students on the west boundary to Jackson. And then Jackson will send 20 students in the southeast corner to Adams, and this was not anything to do with, but we looked at some transportation lines that we thought would work. So essentially we were able to do this. When we look at our facility utilization, it hasn't changed much. So again, this is what you asked to see what it would look like, so we've done it.
Any thoughts? Director Crumwitty?
I was hoping Scott would be here tonight, unless you, Dr. Tate, or someone can help me understand exactly the streets. Now, the first recommendation here is 58 students in the northeast corner of Harrison would go to Truman. Is that, and as I look at the map, I'm not sure what those streets are.
And I certainly cannot help you. I'm wondering, does it make a difference with what we're doing, or?
East corner of Harrison. Harrison district right now, I'm confused about how far that goes over. Are any of those kids walkers to Harrison? Or I know the areas that Larry and I live in, that's that area, and those kids are bused to Harrison.
And I couldn't tell you that, but I'm telling you, either we got to do something like that. I can't keep, you know. So I don't know the streets, but certainly he will be here next Monday. He'll be back from Hawaii, and we can drag the streets out.
That would be very helpful to me
and to
see. Understand exactly what those, because one of my concerns is taking kids who are walkers to Harrison and busing them someplace else. So.
And I can certainly ask that.
Director DeFau.
I greatly appreciate the administration's efforts to redraw this map with consideration of the Kimberly Village neighborhood and retaining those students in the North District, which I think is the most significant consequence of redrawing this boundary, as well as retaining those students residing in the north portion of Harrison in the North District as well. You know, as we mentioned at the previous meeting, not knowing where we're going to land as it relates to boundaries and reducing high school transfer options to create another pocket of students that would attend Adams and then Williams and then be expected to return to North when the natural transition would be to go to West is foolhardy and simply creates another opportunity to bleed more students from the North high school district.
Any additional discussion? All right, we'll move on.
The next thing I want to discuss is the transfer decision process, and I want to remind you of our diversity plan reference chart. This changes every year, and it's from the previous year looking at free and reduced lunch students and how they did on the Iowa assessment. And remember that we put students in two categories, A or B, and we put schools into two categories, A or B. Students are considered A students if they get a needs on their Iowa assessment and are free and reduced or paid. So you could be a paid student. If you get a needs, you're considered to be an A category. You can get a meets on the Iowa assessment and be free and reduced, and you are an A category student. A B category student is one who gets meets on the Iowa assessment and they're paid lunch. Or you can get an exceed on your Iowa assessment, but you're free and reduced lunch. So even if you're free and reduced and get exceeds, you are considered a B student. Schools are then rated according to whether they're A and B based on the ratio of A students to B students in the school. For example, if we look at Jefferson and the sheet that I gave you, for whenever it was counted, there were 309 A students and 28 B students, so their ratio of A to B was 11.0. And we go down to Jackson, the bottom of the page, they had 137 A students and 97 B students, so their ratio of A to B students is 1.4. We find the district average, and in this case, for these totals, the district average is 1.8 to 1. You take all the district A students compared to the B, the ratio is 1.8 to 1, and that is the district average. So any schools that have a larger ratio, meaning more A students to B students, are above that, and are above that average, is called a type A school. If you're below that average, in other words, you have fewer A category students to B, then you are considered a B. So we have type A students, type B students, we have category A schools and category B schools. Our diversity plan says that students can only transfer under the following conditions. A category A student may transfer from a category A school to a category B school. So a student from Fillmore, a category A student, could transfer to McKinley, a category B school. The second way that you can transfer, according to our diversity plan, is a category B student may transfer from a category B school to a category A school. It doesn't say anything about transferring from a category B to another category B school. And this is our diversity plan that we're supposed to have been living with this time. We know the practice has been different than this, but these are our guiding principles, and the reason we have the diversity plan is to deliver quality education, sustaining academic excellence in each of our schools, substantial continuous efforts to eliminate the isolation of disadvantaged students. So that's what our diversity plan is about. So with that in mind, here is I want to give this to you for discussion about that this would be our transfer decision process. And whenever we do decide on whatever it's going to be, it should replace your policy 501.11, students and attendance centers. There should be a policy. So here are the approved reasons to transfer for all levels, from kindergarten through 12th grade. The health of a student is negatively impacted by remaining in his or her school of assignment as verified by a medical professional. The district has the right to confirm the medical opinion. The district will provide transportation. 2, the safety of the student, other students, or staff is negatively impacted by remaining at his or her school as verified by the Director of Equity and Student Services. The district will provide transportation. 3, to provide options to parents as part of the No Child Left Behind legislation concerning schools designated as SINA, schools in need of assistance. Transportation is provided by the district. The student in category A, the student is a category, another way to transfer. The student is a category A student transferring from a category A school to a category B school, reading off of a diversity plan, or a category B student transferring from a category B school to a category A school, as defined by the diversity plan reference chart, which is updated annually. Your policy indicates that when this happens, we will provide transportation. We've not done that before. We have not checked to see, is it a type A student going to a category B school? We have not done that. So what you're hearing here is, unless we change the diversity plan, we need to go back to the diversity plan and follow it. Now, in the future, if you decided in order to balance some schools that were out of balance that you would provide transportation, I think you could probably do that. 5, another approved reason, to attend a specialized program at a high school which would require the students to stay for the majority of a day, more than 2 blocks. Transportation would be provided by the family, and there we're thinking of District of Distinction, the STEM, College Graduation Program, or the IB. There'd be 2 filters for every transfer decision. Transfer requests which qualify under one of the 5 criteria above must also satisfy both of the following requirements. The transfer does not cause the school to exceed the 85% facility utilization target, and 2, the district class size, control policy, and procedures are not violated.
Thank you. Discussion. Director Sherwood.
Yeah, on the proviso for transfer based on physical, the health of a child, I would like that broken out to say psychological and physical, or physical health. Okay.
Additional discussion. Director DeFoe.
For clarity's sake, in item 4, this procedure is the same procedure we use to determine eligibility for out-of-district open enrollment as well.
It is, in fact, and what your plan says is if you use the diversity plan for that, you must use it internally for transfers also. It's a requirement.
And it's not just our plan. It's a requirement of the state of Iowa that if we have a diversity plan, it must be implemented both internally and externally.
And that's what I read in Wendy's letter. I reread that today, yes.
Okay. And so then my question becomes, are you recommending that the district implement this transfer process in lieu of a strict enforcement of boundaries?
I think it is a strict enforcement of boundaries when you look at this, and I don't see any way you cannot do this. And again, when I started reading very strictly the plan, when I started reading the advice from our lawyer, unless you're able to change your plan, this is what it says we have to do.
Okay. Another question in relation to the specialized programming. You referenced some conceptual programs that we're considering through the District of Distinction Committee, but are we also considering the ROTC program, Project Lead the Way, and other programs that may be unique to a specific high school?
I discussed this with the high school principals, and none of those seems to be more than 2 blocks. Mm-hmm. So this would be the kind of program that you'd really be co-registered in 2 schools. So that's why I think that you can probably that you're able to make that. It's not a transfer. What you are is just attending a program at another school. But again, I think we'd have to be I asked them to list all the programs, and that's one place we'd have to be very specific so people understand what is and what isn't.
Sure. So for further clarity, if I were a student that wanted to participate in the ProStart programming at Central, I would be allowed to participate in that programming, but I would retain my enrollment in my home school, whether that be West or North, and would simply travel to participate in those courses?
That's true. That's what this visualizes.
So we're not eliminating the opportunity for students to participate in that programming?
Absolutely not.
I'm good.
Additional discussion?
And
Director Sherwood.
Just to follow up a little so I'm clear on this, as far as the boundaries issues at the high school level and how this applies to that, currently, if memory serves, the number of, how are these schools all rated, the high schools, as far as A or B schools?
They're all B right now.
They're all B. And under your proposed, and the current policy and what your proposed changes, a B would be able to transfer to a B.
They would not.
They would not.
No. And again, it's not my proposal. I'm looking at the diversity plan, and the diversity plan, a Category A may transfer from a Category A school to a Category B. Category B may transfer from B to A. The whole point of this is anytime there's a transfer, it will be a balance. It will not imbalance. That's every person that transfer will work towards balancing.
And what would it take to have the current system that we have meet this? What would we have to do?
I'm not sure what the current system that we're using.
As far as high schools.
Anybody goes just about anywhere they want, so
right.
That would not be permitted if we're going to follow the diversity plan.
Any additional discussion? All right, move on to the next.
I would suggest that someone probably should call Wendy Meyer and ask her. She's not available. She wasn't here tonight. Okay, we've heard it. Here's what he said. What are our options? What's our flexibility?
Yeah, I'll call her tomorrow.
The next is the feeder system. And again, I certainly will encourage you to comment on this. I provided you the current intermediate and high school feeder system and then the proposed. I was trying to have a pure system where elementary would go to only one middle school and one middle school would go to only one high school, and that didn't work out. So what I've shown you, if you look at the central feeder system under proposed intermediate and high school feeder system, Sudlow will go to central only. They will not split. Eisenhower will go to central only, and Garfield to central only. Jefferson will not split. They'll go only to J.B. Young. So the north feeder system would add Williams. And Williams would then be split between both north and west. So Wood would have Fillmore, Harrison, Buchanan, and Truman, and Williams would have Adams. And then the west feeder system would lose Adams, and they'd have Jackson, Williams, Buchanan. Walcott would stay with Walcott, Bluegrass, and Buffalo, and Smart would have Hayes, Jackson, Monroe, Wilson, but no Jefferson. So that would be the feeder system, and that's what we put together to begin looking at how that would affect two things. One is the ratio of A to B type students, and then the second is to look and see about facility usage. And we discovered from the facility usage we still have some more work to do. First, I'd like to discuss F. In the past, we've been using free and reduced lunch in order to look at how schools would be affected. And we realized that that was only part of what we should be looking at. So what you see now are all the schools listed with the current enrollment, and that current enrollment is up to date. It's not going back to October. And if students went home to their historic boundaries or using the new boundaries which we described with the changes for Kimberly Village and all the others that came about. And we were able to merge the program that we have in Infinite Campus that identifies every student on whether they're an A or B type with the bus boundary program to come up with the ratio of, if you use current enrollment, if all the students go home, and the new boundaries. So you could take Adams, for example, and they're 555 now. If all students went home, 534, and if new boundaries, it'll be 565. The AB ratio for Adams is 1.9 right now. If all students went home, it would be 2.0, and with the new boundaries, it would be a 2.3. Now, I've provided you a sheet, the comparison of school ratios now with new boundaries, just to show you that if we use the new boundaries, would the ratio move up or down? Because what we're trying to do, we have our chart that has the A category schools and the B. We want everybody to move towards the center. That's the point. We want to try to have an average for the whole district. So we would like any A-type school to get students in that would move the ratio so that it's a smaller ratio of type A to type B students. And the same thing for B students. We want them to move up so that they will get more of a balance of students. So just to show you what the new boundaries would do, Adams, for example, which is a B student, would have a higher ratio, and that would be good. That would move it more up the chain towards the A. Bluegrass would be the same. Buchanan, which is an A school, they would have a smaller ratio, so it's moving them down towards the center, and that's good. So any B school where you see a plus sign, that means that their ratio is increasing, and that's good. And any A category school that has a minus sign means that's going in the right direction for the new boundaries. So it's not in every case we've got an A school, Truman, for example, that has a plus, so that's moving in the wrong direction. Young is an A, and it's moving in the wrong direction. But what this shows you is that we can calculate, at least for the current enrollment and with the current status of students. Remember, they can go in and out of free and reduced lunch, and we've just had Iowa assessments, so that's going to change as soon as we get their scores soon. So again, I just wanted you to look and see What would happen with the new boundaries? There's not a lot of shocking things there except for Young, where they went from a 4.9 AB ratio to, if we use new boundaries, a 5.8, and that may be a point where you'd want to use some paid busing to try to balance those enrollments. So I'd entertain any questions or comments on this particular presentation.
Anybody? Director Robertson.
Dr. Tate, when I look at the feeder system and I look at the one for Central and I look at the one for North, in terms of students, is that a good balance, total students?
No, we're going to look at the next time. We're going to look at building utilization. We'll find out it's not.
Okay.
So we're going to have to talk a little bit more about that.
Okay.
Great question.
Anybody else? Director DeFau.
So going back to the example of Young and the fact that that AB ratio isn't moving in the direction that we want it to, would you then in fact go out and try to recruit students to transfer into that building to bring that ratio down? Or I mean, when you talked about using paid busing as an incentive, I mean, can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, that's my preferred. I would hope that the AVID program, the K-8, the Move On and Ready would bring people in there. Another way is to give people an opportunity to go out from an A-type student from the A school to a B school. So that'd be another way you could do it, so I could see the transportation possibly moving in both directions.
Okay.
Anybody else? I've got a couple things. From a practical perspective, how do you split a school like Williams as it feeds to two different high schools?
You do it by boundaries. So there will actually be a line on the ground that splits the students who go to that school. And by moving that boundary, we can then adjust the utilization of the building.
All right.
Or the AB ratio also.
You know, what you just presented was what appears to me to be a pretty complex system. And it's one that I might enjoy with the work that I do, but it looks like when I look at all of these A's and B's and categories, and I think about Director Kluhl's admonitions to us, you know, to just like have fun, especially in kindergarten, and it seems like this is fantastically complex, and it's mostly driven by our diversity plan. Is that a correct interpretation, or is it a lot simpler than I'm thinking?
It's not simple, and it's 100% driven by the diversity plan.
And it has to be as long as we have the diversity plan.
That would be my interpretation.
Any other discussion?
And that interpretation you're going to check with our attorney on, and how will you let us know about that? I would like that feedback as soon as possible.
I'll try and get the feedback probably through the secretary as soon as possible. Yeah. Director Robertson?
Dr. Tate, the question I have for you, when I look at William has always been divided but has not been enforced. Is that not correct? They were split. There were some went to west and some were supposed to go to north.
They have been, but we've had a pretty liberal policy about which high school you go to.
Right.
And I can't tell you how many go where, and I just don't know.
So our diversity plan, as far as you're concerned, your interpretation is what we really should be following in terms of how we place students?
That's my interpretation.
Okay, thank you.
Director Crumity.
Yes, I appreciate you having the conversation with Wendy, but I think it would be good for her to be here so board members could ask her specific questions. As I remember, when we worked on the diversity plan, I don't ever remember a conversation with in-district transfers. It was always between districts, and that was the intent, and that's what we agreed upon. So I'm I'm concerned right now that, and I know that's your interpretation, Dr. Tate, I'm concerned right now that now we're getting into in-district transfers, and now we're applying this diversity plan to in-district when what the original intent was transfers between districts. So I think we need to have more conversation about that. I also would like to know is if our original intent was between districts, then is there an opportunity to modify our diversity plan? Because now we're including in-district transfers under this diversity plan, which was never the intent as far as what I understood it to be.
But this page has always been there, and I was reading right off the diversity plan reference chart, and it's been there from the beginning.
But we never had that conversation.
Probably you haven't.
Yep.
Director Sherwood?
Yeah, and I'd like to speak to Wendy, too. I'm not sure what we have to do, but one thing I'm not willing to do, at least personally, is that to give up the freedom of choice at the high school level. And I think for a number of reasons. One, I think that that's important for kids who are starting to have options, which they don't have at the intermediates and the elementaries, to have options. And for this competitive thing with other districts, it's absolutely correct. We're going to see more people go into the private schools and into out of district and not come into the Davenport schools if we enforce that. And so that's going to hurt us, I think, significantly, both as far as our culture and our bottom line. So that whatever it takes for us to make a modification in this, I think we have to find a way to do that.
Director DeFau.
And I would have to say that I think we're making presumptions on facts, not in evidence. For us to say that we're going to lose an unsustainable number of students if we restrict boundaries is an assumption, not a fact. And yes, I believe, as Denise Hollenbeck stated at the last open forum, that we might experience a spike in the first year as some people, react to the changes. She, by her own experience, said that was the experience of the school district in the past, and that once that initial spike occurred, that it stabilized. And, if people would make the choice, the unfortunate choice, to move from our district to another district nearby, I do not believe for a moment that those houses are going to stand empty and barren of no families. And when those homes are purchased by other families with school-age children, they will be purchased with the expectation that the students attend the class in the building in which the boundaries in which they reside. So again, I don't know that we can say the loss that we may experience momentarily will be a long-term loss. There are pluses and minuses for any variety of schools within our own district and even for other districts that are nearby. But by and large, I think that this district offers the most opportunity, the most diversity, and with the exception of maybe a less than spectacular record in our athletics, I challenge any district to hold a candle to us in other regards. So I don't know that we can make those assumptions. I don't want to lose those families, but we can't be held hostage by them either. We have to work in what's in the educational best interest of all of our students.
Mr. President.
Director Sherwood.
And again, none of us have facts to go on. We're all going on assumptions and on our best judgments. And that to say that it's not in the best interest, educational interest of our students to have open enrollment, I think would be a flawed position. I think it is, in fact, in the educational best interest to allow schools to develop their areas of expertise, to attract kids to support those areas of expertise, to begin the process of creating their futures in that regard, rather than to have them lockstep or try to create a monolithic structure that all kids have to fit into.
Director Robertson.
Neighborhood schools, I think, create where kids really end up wanting to go to school. If I watch the kids that grow up in the Harrison and the Wood School District, they talk about going to North High School. And if you get down to J.B. Young and some other places, they talk about going to Central High School. There's an alignment, you know, with these schools. And the thing that I want everybody to continue to realize, we have 3 great high schools that have different things that they offer. And I'm proud to say that, you know, I'm a part of this board that continue to advocate for all of our high schools, grade schools and intermediate schools. We do have great schools. My kids went to North. Their friends, some of their friends went to Central. They're still friends today. It had nothing to do. It's just their choices. They went where they lived. And I truly believe that all of these schools have great things, and we have to continue to advocate, you know, for them. And I am in agreement with Director DeFowl that yes, you could have some people that get angry and leave, but eventually it'll come back. There was a lady here earlier tonight that talked about she transferred in because of the TAG program, because of the diversity and some other things. She came from another district. So those are the types of reasons that people come. And yes, we are going to get better at athletics, Mrs. DeFowl. We're going to get better.
I'm confident of it.
Thank you.
Director DeFowl.
Oh gosh, now Director Robertson has distracted me. And the one point that I do want to make is that, you know, not all students go to school where they live, and in fact 20% of North's population does not attend school where they live. It's not sustainable, and by our own data, students are not transferring between high schools to attend programming. We have had the data for well over a month that indicates less than 100 students district-wide have indicated, well less than 100 students have indicated that the reason they're transferring is because they want to attend specific programming such as ProStart, Project Lead the Way, the Business Academy, other programs that they cannot get in their home school.
Director Crumwoody.
Yes, just in response to Director Robertson, and I wholeheartedly agree with kids starting out in elementary school wanting to go on to that intermediate school, wanting to go on to that high school. And with the proposed feeder system, however, it works in the Harrison district. It works for Wood. It works for North. All those kids are together. But if you look at the feeder system, the kids that are going to Sudlow come from Eisenhower, a big chunk of them, which then what we're saying is they would no longer be with their friends. They would no longer be with exactly what you're talking about because they then would feed into North.
Not in the new proposal. I don't.
What do you mean not in the new
Well,
all Sudlow's.
Please keep speaking,
okay.
Not between yourselves.
Okay. So if I understand the recommendation for the feeder system, Eisenhower kids would feed into Sudlow. And so all of Sudlow kids would feed into Central.
Mm-hmm.
Even the kids that live north of Kimberly Road.
That's what I see on the recommendation.
Okay. I misunderstood that. Okay.
Any additional discussion? Director Kluhl.
Well, I think our attorney is going to have a field day with our diversity plan. I was actually part of the policy committee when this was drafted, and you can read this any which way you want to. I mean, there's statements here that says these charts that we referred to and Dr. Tate discussed will serve as reference points for the approval or denial of requests made for between district as well as within district transfers. So, but then you have statements that are very declaratory, saying that applications for open enrollment out of the district will not be granted if it is found that the release of the applications will adversely affect the district category A to B ratio. But it seems to me that this is a big issue that's come up here with our diversity plan, and it was created in lieu of a desegregation plan. And we did not know what we were going to be talking about 6 years hence. But it seems to me that the charts are specifically related to open enrollment between districts. The chart here is headed off. It says Diversity Plan Reference Chart District Ratio to be used as part of the approval or denial of between district open enrollment request for 2012-13 student academic performance. I think that once we get an interpretation from our attorney about what this means, we may need to relook at this diversity plan so that the tail, in effect, doesn't wag the dog. Because to have a diversity plan that tells us, 6 years hence from when we created it, to tell us to do things that may be contradictory to the best interest of our students, we'll need to look at seriously. So I look forward again to seeing that interpretation from our attorney as soon as possible.
Any more discussion? Superintendent Tate.
I had the same impression when I first read this diversity plan. I said, what? It does apply to out of district, but it clearly applies in district. I have heard people in the audience talk about that we need to make sure that we don't disadvantage our students by the way we draw boundaries or the way we allow transfers. We have discovered that there's two things. It's how they do academically on the Iowa assessment test as well as free and reduced. I think that's a good measure, and I think the people who are type A students are type A students, and they need our every consideration. And the more I think about how this lines up and the fact that anyone who's going to move has got to bring this ratio closer to the average of the district, to me is what we're all about. And you read that first page of the diversity plan, it talks about that. And the more I think about it, what are we going to do for a Jefferson that's a 9.8 and thinking about a Washington that's a 2.1? Is there something we need to do there? I mean, we need to think about it. To me, this is a great way to do it, because when I started looking at free and reduced lunch, I just, again, that was more difficult than looking at this, because I can take every student and on Infinite Campus know whether they're an A or B. So again, I welcome the talk. I think we need to find out what latitude you have, if any, on that. But I would ask that you don't just think it's not a good plan, because the more I've worked with it, the more I see it's a way to balance fairly where students go to school.
Mr. President.
Director Sherwood.
Yeah, and look, I believe wholeheartedly in minimizing the impact of poverty wherever we can, and this is an attempt to do that. But anytime we try to impose a one-size-fits-all solution on a complex organization, you're almost always going to have a lot of heartache. And so as we become more generalized, for instance, if we have a school, we'll just take Jefferson. We have Jefferson. Racial isolation is a real issue there. The boundary issue is a real issue at Jefferson School. But as we go on to a larger pool, we go on to the pool of Smart, for instance, or Williams, that becomes less of an issue as far as the impact of racial isolation. And by the time we get to the high school level, racial isolation has disappeared in the Davenport system, as you can see from this thing all the way across the board. And so we haven't been applying this formula to the high school level for 6 years. Is that what you said, Rich?
6+.
We have not been doing that, and our balance is almost ideal. So why would we want to mess with something that a system is already working very nicely, thank you, and impose a fix on something that's not needed? At the elementary level, I think it's absolutely probably needed, but it becomes less so as we move up the chain because of the larger pools involved. And I think that we have a logical reason to limit the impact of this.
I'd like to, Director Kluhl, did you have something else you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, so last thing I'll say is,
all right.
You're going to hold me to it, aren't you? It's Dr. Tate mentioned that he saw the validity in this ratio that we've developed, and I'm going to question that, because I think while it's important to recognize, remembering that this plan started out so that races were equally distributed in our schools. Again, that was the federal government that came in and told us, look, you need to do this. We could no longer do that after the U.S. Supreme Court said you can no longer use color as the primary basis to diversify your school. So we came up with this ratio. And while I understand that socioeconomic status has an impact on diversity, and it's an issue of diversity that I think we need to pay close attention to, adding in your ability to perform well on a performance-based assessment is capricious to me in terms of where our kids should be in school. I don't know that there's any scientific data that would show that it is important to make a determination on which school your child goes to based on your ability to score on a standardized test. So I don't have that same confidence that you do that the measure that we have before us is one that we should divide our children on.
What I was going to suggest is a couple of things. First, the superintendent has, and I have, discussed with Wendy this issue of the diversity plan, and the board has had some of the emails or documents that have been supplied by Wendy. All of those documents will be supplied to the board before next meeting, which is next week. So we'll get all those out to you. I will talk with Wendy about this tomorrow if she's available, and I will invite her to the meeting on Monday if she's available. I would encourage everybody here on the board to think a lot about this issue. And I think part of what's happening, too, is that there's a legal issue involved, and that the diversity plan by itself is one thing, but I think the code, and I think it's the Iowa code that actually requires that we have to use it in our district if we're going to use it between our districts. So, but we'll clarify those, and we'll have the opportunity to ask a lot of questions. And I sure have had a lot of questions in my mind, but I don't think there's anybody here that can probably answer them. Is there any other discussion on this issue? Well, no, you aren't done with your presentation. I'm sorry. On the issue of the what we've been talking about, which is like D, E, F, and G.
We haven't hit G yet.
Oh, you haven't hit G. I apologize.
G is the new boundary utilization. Just like I did in some of the other presentations, this is using the new boundary enrollment. So it's changed slightly because we've changed some of the boundaries. Of interest, Garfield, Harrison, and Washington are 80 to 83%. So we've accomplished part of our mission to release the overcrowding there. We might be concerned, look at Young, 57%. It's growing, so we'd want to try to perhaps balance that a little more. The concern would be West High School, whether under the feeding system that I propose, Central is 70%, North is 78%, and West is 59%. We were trying to balance a little bit more, all three high schools, so I need to go back to the drawing board before I provide you another feeder system for you to look at and balance that somewhat. But you can see that, again, we're trying to stay lower than the 85. Madison is 87, so that's a little over what we'd hope for.
Director Cromedy.
Dr. Tate, Truman at 105%, and you made reference to that earlier, I think, tonight, in that you said there was a plan to add classrooms Truman over the next 2 or 3 years.
Thank you. I had a big arrow there and I forgot to discuss it. With the grandfathering we're going to discuss next, we presume that the change would happen over time and slowly, and we're looking at 3 to 5 classrooms, and we're not sure how many, but certainly 3 classrooms would take up the difference. So although it shows 105 there, the relief will be more than adequate to bring it to 85, I'm sure.
So that would be a gradual increase at Truman, not
yes,
5% next
right.
year. Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, thank you.
H is the sequence for implementing boundary changes. When we change boundaries, how do we make it work? Elementary school, beginning immediately, meaning after the boundaries are accepted and approved, except as stipulated in the transfer decision process. And this document, no transfers between elementary schools will be permitted. Students affected by boundary changes may continue in their current elementary school if they attended last year or are in the current boundary for kindergarten. So the kindergarten people who are signing up right now would go ahead and go to that kindergarten. Elementary students who are in a changed boundary which assigns them to a school other than the one they attended last year are encouraged and permitted to attend their new school. 4 under elementary, siblings of elementary students who are grandfathered into a school due to boundary changes can enroll in that school as long as the sibling is still in attendance. This elongates the process. It can take 4, 5, 6 years in order to make changes. And the intermediate, beginning immediately except as stipulated in the transfer decision process in this document, no transfers between intermediate schools will be permitted. Students affected by boundary changes may continue in their current intermediate school if they attended last year. 7. Current 5th grade students may attend the intermediate school assigned by current boundaries rather than the new boundaries. 8. Intermediate students who are in a changed boundary which assigns them to a school other than the one they attended last year are encouraged and permitted to attend the new school. And 9, siblings of intermediate students who are grandfathered into a school due to a boundary change can enroll in that school as long as the sibling is still in attendance. And at high school, beginning September 1st, 2013, except as stipulated in the transfer decision process in this document, no transfers between high schools will be permitted. So that is a way to implement the boundaries.
Any discussion? Director Sherwood.
Yeah, my feeling is that for these high-pressure schools that we've heard about, Washington and the others, that we have to be more forthright on finding impacts on those schools than this may be. Quicker. Thank you. And if that means that kindergarten kids, for instance, that are there now, that don't have an older sibling, are required to go to a different school, it's not the best solution, but it may be better than continuing with that huge overcrowding that we have. As long as parents don't have to go to 2 places, which most of us did anyway, but as long as they don't have to go to 2 places, and it has a rapid impact on those seriously overcrowded schools, I guess I would support something like that.
Any additional discussion? Are you done with the discussion on boundaries, Superintendent Tate?
I am.
Okay, thank you. We're going to get into administrative reports and board reports and requests here in just a minute. I wanted to take a moment, though, and thank all of you out there. We've got a great community. We've got great students and parents and teachers, custodians, nurses, and we're really, really thankful for all of you being here and for, again, for the input, but also for your support and your participation in our district and in our community. I'll move on to administrative reports. Are there any board reports or requests? Director DeFau.
since I made the comment about less than spectacular athletic performances, I wanted to mention spectacular athletic performance, which was mentioned briefly by Andre earlier, and that is that the North High School bowling team did in fact win the Class 2A state tournament last week, breaking the state record along the way, and senior Zach Fries. Senior Zach Fries took the state individual title and bowled a 300 game in the process, and two other students, Austin Lamock and Austin Wolf, respectively, were 3rd and 5th in the state. So that's the 2nd time in 3 years they've taken that state title.
That's a great report. Thank you.
Yes, it is.
Any additional board reports or requests? Director Sherwood.
Attended 2 things. Several of us went to Pro Start, and I just wanted to compliment them publicly, and I know everybody else will too. Just an amazing event, and a huge number of folks from the community there. The chefs that participated were just magnificent. It was really an upbeat, pleasant evening, and even our vegetarian ate well. So it was really good. So that was great. Then I went to an excellent musical at North High School, the Legally Blonde. And the kids in that show, I'm not kidding, were just as good as it was in the movie. I thought they were just excellent. The downside was that the audio system sucked. And it happened to me at Central High School. It happened to me here, and I hear it's going on at West. And you know what? That is, you're talking about advertising for this district. You've got grandmas and aunts and uncles and everybody else, and Nikki and that crowd put together a nice audience. Ms. Tafal was doing her mom thing, put together a really nice audience, very enthusiastic folks, but frequently you couldn't understand a thing that was being said. And that's just, it's unconscionable. These kids work their rear ends off. The director works their rear end off. They all do an excellent job, and then we put out, over technical things, a less than spectacular show for everybody. So I talked to Scott Martin about this thing, and I encouraged him from my point of view that we need to have at least some short-term fixes, and he says that there are some, that ensures that these performances aren't marred by this kind of problem. And long-term, and I thought it should have happened at Central, or I'm sorry, at North, that when they built that auditorium, that there was significant planning for the broad needs of that student body in that technical aspect, but it doesn't sound like that really happened. And so we have to go back and make sure that occurs. And I'm not talking about 2 years from now, but I'm talking about tomorrow morning. And in the planning for Central High School's new auditorium, and I know they're doing a very good job of this, but that has to be really, the technical aspects of that auditorium have to be fully investigated, and we make sure this is done right. These kids are just working their tails off, and we're missing a heck of an advertisement opportunity for these shows not to show their entire, brightness that they have. So anyway, real good program.
Director Robertson.
Director Kluhl and myself visited Jefferson, and I just want to tell you that that whole staff and volunteers are working tremendously hard to provide educational opportunities for the kids. And I'm going back. I couldn't stay as long as Director Kluhl did because I was running on E from work the night before. But I'm going back and have a conversation with the teachers because I think they're doing a marvelous job, and I want to be as supportive of them as I can.
Director Kluhl.
And just to add on to that, it was a good meeting. Met with the principal and representatives from Edison, and we had a frank discussion with them, and I think that Director Dr. Robertson, and I both made it very clear to them that we're very happy with what we're seeing, but I think that what we wanted to make clear was that the board wanted to see from 1999 to current date, how have we improved, and is that level of improvement acceptable? So I think the last 3 years they've made some real strides, but I did make sure that they understood that we want to look at the entire scope of what they've done and the promises that they've made. The only other thing is to just, it seems like let's talk about North Night, so I wanted to add and have Director DeFow fill me in on the name of the teacher who won the Iowa Science Award at North High School. Best teacher, a significant event.
On the spot because it was, help me out. It was Laura McCurry.
Laura McCurry.
Yes.
Well, recognition
thank you,
to
because
her.
I was going to say another name. So yes, and that's the second time she's been acknowledged as the Iowa High School Science Teacher of the Year. So great kudos to her, and she's very well thought of.
And since we're talking about North High School, and I don't have all of the details, but a former swimmer there by the name of, last name is Bruce, has been doing great things. So we ought to give him a nice hand also.
Director Crumwoody.
I have a couple things. First of all, I too would like to congratulate the ProStart group, and especially Jean Cross, the teacher, and the students. They were just phenomenal as they stepped forward and spoke about their experiences. The chefs that give of their time, and I just thought that it was a great experience listening to them and having conversation with the chefs and learning more and more about that program each year. It's a great program and one we all need to be very proud of. On another note, I would like to extend our condolences to the family of Mike Wiley. Mike Wiley was a physical education teacher in this district for over 40 years, and he also was a coach both at Sudlow and Central, and I'm not exactly sure. He may have been a coach in other places, but Mike gave a lot to this district. He was a very, very highly respected individual and teacher, and we will miss him very much. So our condolences to his family.
More than that, if I may add on to that, Mr. Wiley was a person that the young kids looked up to. There were a lot of kids that played baseball and did a lot of other things because he went to their house and he picked them up and he took them to practice. So it's a tremendous loss, and I was very sad because I knew him quite well.
Thank you. Any additional reports or requests? Right, I'll get to those in a second. Anybody else? All right. I've got two board requests. First is from Director Sherwood, date 3/18/13, agenda item. I'd like to discuss all possible alternatives to us when a student is expelled and how we arrive at an expulsion decision. Thank you. Second one is from Director Sherwood, date of request 3/18/13. Information request. The report on suspensions and expulsions thus far this school year includes student grade, ethnicity, membership, and sex breakdown by number of out-of-school days and by type of offense. For example, violent and nonviolent. I was hoping we'd have more student board members here tonight, actually. And one thing that I was not quite aware of, and I'm not sure exactly how it happened, but one of our board members, Noah Sund, graduated already. And tonight was probably going to be his last opportunity to participate, the way I understand it. So we will contact him on behalf of the board and just make sure, see if he's coming to the next meeting. But normally our student board members have an opportunity to speak to the board and give them a little bit of their thoughts. So we'll ask for some of that. I just wanted everybody to be aware. And the last thing that I have is, for some time we've talked about putting the videos of our board meetings on our website. The technology has been available for a while, excuse me, and now that I've had the opportunity to explore it, and the board understands that the videos will be on YouTube and will not slow down our website, I heard no other reason to not participate, so we will start putting those on probably this week, and I'm probably going to put a couple of months of history of board meetings onto the website. So I just want everybody to be aware. Is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. This meeting is adjourned.